norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are white. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
Hello, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Boy, Girl, Mom
and Dad.
We're here with Lauren Molinas and myself, Nick Molinas. Not starting with a jingle or any ba-da-bops because that's not cool. We're going to be very jazzy today.
Yeah, smooth jazz.
Anyway. Shout out Frasier.
Welcome back to episode 13.
Did I overcorrect?
Yeah, you overcorrected.
Do you want me to bring the ba-da-bops back?
No, thank you. But
okay. I'll find
Lucky 13, episode 13. Welcome back to Boy, Girl, Mom, and Dad podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Nick, mid-sip.
Of coffee, yeah. What coffee are you drinking this morning?
Birch. Great roaster.
From where in the world?
Actually,
you don't remember
where Birch is from. You're testing my
No, I just didn't know where the beans were from this morning.
Well, I used an Ethiopian.
There you go. That's all I was asking.
Peak Roasters. That was for my espresso shot.
Oh.
This is from Cometeer, who we've talked about before. They're amazing. And it's from Birch because Cometeer partners with great roasters.
Mm-hmm. But you made the espresso shot.
I made the espresso shot, which felt very good. I haven't allowed myself time to make coffee in a while, and it worked out this morning because I showered at the gym instead of at home when I got home from the gym.
And I walked the dog.
We haven't really talked. Yes, you did. Did you like walking the dog?
I did. It was a great,
beautiful day.
Beautiful
Good day for you to walk the dog too. I did not expect you to walk the dog, by the way.
It was nice.
I'm glad you asked because like I said, when I came up the stairs on the way back home, I was like, I should ask if she wants to go because it's really nice and she would like it. And then I got to the door and I was like, oh, I don't want to take her away from her work because this is her work time.
Yeah. The espresso machine.
This is how we know we're perfect for each other because we have the same thoughts.
Espresso. The espresso machine we have is the Elite Anna machine. It's great.
It's a great starter machine. It's killer. And its like, price point is much more attractive than most espresso machines.
Yeah, and it works great, and we don't have to get
sponsor us.
We don't have to get into this, but the reason I bought it for Nick's birthday the other year, and I bought this one at the recommendation of a friend who is a barista, and he said this one was good because if something breaks, you don't have to like send the whole machine away like you do with the other machines on the market that are probably more like not user friendly, but a little bit more
convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nothing against those machines. They're just harder to maintain.
That's why I'm just giving the why.
And I already have had to take it apart and repair it.
Yep.
There was something wrong with the compressor, which is a nerdy thing that's difficult to get to in most espresso machines. But like Lauren said, this comes completely apart. We should stop talking about it. Hey, Lilith, you can sponsor us.
Yeah. Also, Nick's an engineer, and so he probably liked taking it all apart and putting it back together.
I did.
Yeah. We don't have to keep talking about that. But today we're talking about parenting.
Because on the parenting podcast.
But our title today is Where Are Their Parents?
Where are they?
Where are they? And
you
basically
very Valley Girl right there.
I was trying to sound like anyway.
Yeah, you did it.
It's kind of twofold. It's when people don't necessarily parent their own kids like when they're present or in the room or
the way that we would expect them
right.
to.
Also, what I'm saying is sometimes, I'm not saying ignore is a strong word, but focus on other things to where they're not paying attention to
where
their
it
kids.
Seems like they are more passive where we would not be passive. Yes.
And then
I don't mean to correct you. I'm just
No. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
And then also it could be, and also it's not like disciplining. We're not saying to discipline other people's kids, but more so interacting and protecting your child from whether it be like physical, mental harm, any of that. But also it could be parenting around someone else who parents differently, whether that is another parent friend, whether that's your parents, whether that's like your friends and not just their mannerisms.
In-laws, whoever.
Yeah, all of them. So it can just present struggles. And so we're just going to talk about it today. But before we get into that, we have some housekeeping. You ready? So last week, Nick is pretending to sweep. You look like
pretending to be
Fantasia.
Cypress sweeping.
Oh, Cypress loves to sweep. I was thinking about Fantasia and Mickey Mouse. He might like that. We should show him.
We should.
A hamburger update. Basically, we talked about hamburgers last week, and I was like, you said, where was the name from? Can confirm. I looked it up. It is from Hamburg, Germany, because that's where it was created. Basically, some sailors in the 19th century came back from Russia, and they brought back like raw shredded beef, what we now call like beef tartare. And one of the chefs rather decided to cook it, and that's how it became a hamburger. And then in America, it made its first appearance in the United States at the Louisiana Purchase in 1904.
Oh, so it wasn't McDonald's. I thought it would have been McDonald's.
No.
Interesting.
No, remember we watched the documentary thing on it, and it was
I know they pioneered like the assembly line
yes, the
version
assembly
of
line, so
fast
like the
food,
Model
but
T.
For some reason, I also had it in my head that it was like that style of burger was also invented by them, but I was
no,
wrong.
that's just Chick-fil-A.
I've been wrong before.
That's just Chick-fil-A and the chicken sandwich.
I'm wrong like once or twice a year, so this is probably
so yeah, you're out for the year.
That's my second one. Halfway through.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, last week our episode was on boy mom culture versus girl mom culture, and something that we didn't discuss that I was thinking about, because we talked about like the origin and like why these exist. That's episode 12, by the way, if you want to go back and listen to it. But basically, boy mom and girl mom are reinvented versions of mama's boy and daddy's girl, just like said another way. Obviously talking about the parent, and we kind of mentioned mama's boy. We didn't mention daddy's girl. I feel like there's not necessarily a negative connotation.
We briefly did, but we didn't talk about it. Yeah.
We mentioned the Electra complex, which is the opposite of the Oedipus complex.
I would agree, though, it does not carry as much of a negative stigma.
The other thing I was going to say that we didn't really talk about that's also negative, and it's interesting that's just gendered here, is like sissy and tomboy. Whereas tomboy is seen as like cool per se. No, you're saying no?
Go ahead.
Well, I just think of, so growing up in the 90s, I love Mary-Kate and Ashley. I still have dreams that like I'm best friends with them one day, not in a stalker way, and I just think that they're great. And my background is fashion. They have the row, and they have other things, but I would just really like to be friends with them. Again, not in a creepy way. If you hear this,
that's
not in a creepy way.
People say.
No,
just say I would like to be friends with them.
I would like
that's
to
not
be
a
friends
weird
with
statement.
them.
It's not a weird statement. It's weird when you say not in a weird way. Then it's weird. And it's weird.
I didn't say not in a good way. I just said not in a weird. Anyway, Mary-Kate was like the face of tomboy, and I don't necessarily describe myself as tomboy, but like I wanted to wear a backwards hat because she wore a backwards hat, and it takes two. Anyway, I felt like tomboy was seen as kind of cool, and then the opposite of that is sissy. I like when you call a boy a sissy, and so it's just interesting. I feel like, again, daddy's girl didn't have really the negative connotation. Maybe you think tomboy does, but like I feel like those are not necessarily taken negatively.
I think that they are taken differently by the opposite gender. So I remember a lot of girls would make fun of tomboys, of girls that were considered tomboys because they weren't into the same things.
Was that in California or was that in Texas?
Both.
Huh. I don't remember that in growing up in Texas.
And I also remember, guys would make fun of other guys that were, more feminine or not as, athletic or
didn't
whatever.
Play football.
So I think that the opposite gender would see the sissy type boy or whatever they would call that guy. Women would see them as sensitive and attractive, right?
Okay.
And like the opposite, guys don't typically have a problem with tomboys. Like they like that the girls are trying to be athletic, so it's like, I think it's among the same gender that
interesting.
You saw an opposite opinion.
We just didn't touch on that. And so I wanted to bring it up because I was thinking about it this week, but honestly, it's a great episode. So I would recommend, not to toot our own horn here, but I feel like it was a great episode and you should go back and listen to that one.
I think it was good. Yeah. Are you saying you thought it was good because I cried?
No, I didn't say that, but you should watch it till the end on YouTube or just get to the end and Nick cried. I'm not sure how.
I haven't seen that back yet.
I haven't seen it back either.
Weird.
I don't think it looks weird.
I cried, but not in a weird way.
Not in a weird way. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I sang a song. I did actually shared it on my personal Instagram stories this week, and I sang it this morning, and Nick was like, "Is that a new Miss Rachel song?" And I was like, "No, that is a Miss Lauren song. It's my song." So I was
the highest of compliments of the child.
I was just gonna sing it here for you because I think it's helpful. So a baby or a toddler in our case don't necessarily like it whenever you're cleaning them up after they've eaten. And our twins eat a lot of oatmeal. Shout out to Bob's Red Mill. That's the one we normally buy, the gluten-free one. And then we also put chia seeds in it, which can be very messy, and they put it in their hair and stuff. Anyway, they
happens with mac and cheese too.
Yeah, but chia seeds are particularly hard to get out,
yeah.
And oatmeal gets sticky. It's like they give themselves an oatmeal conditioner bath.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I sing the song to them, and it's a little bit easier because I used to like do like Mission Impossible and like kind of tickle them when they do it, and they liked that when they were younger, but now they don't. So anyway, here's the song. Let's make sure I can remember it because now I'm nervous. All right. Before we play, we wash our face, wash our hands, wash our tray. Before we play, we wash our face after we eat.
Very good.
Yeah. So if you want to use
Coming on
that,
Spotify very soon.
if you want to use that, do it. I'd love for you to.
That's great.
Okay, and then last thing, there's that I just thought would be helpful. We have been dealing with, I feel like for the past 2 weeks, just like congestion, springtime allergies type stuff. And something that's really helped us are just the Highland Naturals cough and cold. You just give it in a syringe. I think what's hard is
Can you say what it is? It's cough and cold what? Syrup?
syrup. I mean, I actually don't think there's any sugar. We have it right here if you want to grab it. It's right there. This little combo pack here, Highland Naturals Mucus and Cold Relief Combo Pack. It doesn't have sugar, parabens, or dyes, and it's like homeopathic. They have a daytime, sorry, I'm making a lot of noise, a daytime and a nighttime version. And what I like it is because they have a baby version. They have a kids version too, but a lot of stuff on the market is like 2 and up. And this is for 6 months and up. It comes with a syringe, really easy to use. Maybe you want to sponsor us, Highlands?
Yeah, you can. Hot tip, make sure there's a syringe in there. This
Oh,
company gives you one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't.
No,
and
yeah.
that's been a problem.
Yeah.
As recently as 3 days ago.
Yeah,
for
we
us.
were trying to buy some. They were out of the baby version
Yeah.
at Target. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. And yeah, Highlands, if you want to sponsor us, please let us know.
Yeah, this is just the first 10 minutes of this episode is just us calling for sponsors.
No. I think it's all very helpful.
It
It's
is.
things that we use and it's organic.
It is.
Highland Naturals is organic, but
That's true.
this is all organic and stuff that we use and that's what we like to
That's
promote.
true.
Yeah, now it's time for TIFF. You know what it is. This is a little bit different. Last week we did one where I knew Nick and I were both on the same side and I just wanted to hear from other people. I experienced it this week. So it's about sharing, which I thought was perfect for this episode, just about like kids and a lot of times their issues in parenting, if like another parent's not paying attention, is sharing. And so I was in yoga this week and I've noticed this several times, so I know it's something that's repeated, but there's a couple that comes in and they on purpose only bring in one water bottle and one sweat towel. They place it in between each other and then they both use it during the yoga class. It's a hot yoga class. And so I just want to preface this before I say my opinion here. I'm good at sharing. Like, I feel like Nick and I share very well. Typically when we go to a restaurant, we purposely share. Like, we're great at it. There are certain times where I don't want to share. Like, if I'm eating half of a cookie and there's a whole cookie and a half cookie on the counter, sometimes Nick comes up and just eats my other half of the cookie and I'm like, where'd the cookie go? Type scenario. Or if like we didn't prepare to share, like there's a place in Texas. Are you annoyed that I'm giving all this context?
No, I'm just saying you're getting away from your point.
Yeah, but no, I'm just giving some background here. So there's a place in Dallas area, like Richardson specifically, called Cafe Max, and I remember one time Nick brought it to me for lunch when I was at work, and he assumed that I would share the chicken salad with him, and he got this pot. Do you even remember this?
Keep going.
The like seafood salad, which I did not want, and I was like, no, we're not sharing the chicken salad. Like, I don't want any of your seafood salad. I will give you a bite, but like, this is my chicken salad. Because like there's just specific things like I have to prepare for, or not even prepare for, but that I'm very specific about. My whole point is like, I'm willing to share with you. If you need a sip of water, I will give you some of my water, However, if we are planning to share a water bottle and a sweat towel in a yoga class, no, I don't want to do that. I want my own sweat towel and I want my own water bottle. It's a hot yoga class. What's your opinion?
I couldn't agree more.
Great.
It's interesting that you're bringing this up because I'm not even close to the
I didn't think that you would be on the other side. I just thought it was interesting and I came back wanting to tell you what happened. But I wanted to save it for the podcast, so I didn't.
That seems like the same thing as sharing the driver's seat in the car while you're driving. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But the other things you brought up, I should defend myself on.
Okay.
What do we do with a banana in the morning? We open the
it.
banana, we split it up the same way. We give some to the twins, some to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're sharing that banana.
Mm-hmm.
And you usually leave my piece of the banana on the counter for me to get.
Yeah.
How is that different from the cookie?
Because
you didn't set the standard of a cookie.
The cookie happened
well
before the banana ever happened.
The cookies happened a few times and it doesn't make sense to me. I now, if I see anything that's not a whole cookie, it terrifies me.
Well,
and I don't want to touch it because I don't know.
More so
and
like,
sometimes, true or false, sometimes you eat half of a cookie and that's just all you wanted. And
yeah,
you don't care
sometimes
about the
we
other half.
intentionally split. And that's why I'm saying I'm not like against sharing, but sometimes I just want, like, there's like videos and stuff where girls do this where they're like, just break off a piece because that's all they want, and they come back and they expect it to be there and it's not
Yes,
there.
but
It's kind of like
what I'm saying,
empty chip bag theory is where you're eating the chips and then you keep eating and you think there's something there, but there's actually not. And then it's like ghost of the chip past. And you're like, you feel kind of empty inside because you thought there was another one and you would have eaten it differently.
yeah, just tell me you don't want me to eat the cookie. Hey, babe, I left a half a cookie in there. I'm going to eat it later.
Okay. I could see that.
You know what I mean?
And it's not in every scenario,
Leave
which
a
why
note.
I understand why it's confusing. But like, it's the same thing. Like if I make eggs and we're eating off the same plate and there's two sausages, if I cut into the sausage and start eating that sausage and then you decide to cut on the same sausage, I'm like, why didn't you just cut into the other sausage? Like I'm eating this sausage.
I understand, but we're sharing the meal and we share most of our food like you just told everybody that we typically
But
do.
it's clear.
So unless I know that you're expecting something, I don't have a problem with you holding half of something for yourself later. That would make me crazy to have a problem with that. I have a problem with the communication. I'm just saying, let me know. If you know you're going to set something aside and you want it to be there for yourself later, let me know or write a note or do something.
Saying like, if there's two cookies, clearly there's one for you, one for me. So why are you touching my cookie?
But if it's not weird for you to want half a cookie, it's also not weird for me to sometimes want half a cookie. Yeah. So if I see one cookie and a half a cookie and I think, oh, I only want half and there's a half available, I'm not going to break a second cookie to get my half unless I know that it's waiting for you. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Just communicate with me.
And I just want to say, it's not like one of my favorite movies. I think it's very underrated is Maid of Honor with Patrick Dempsey. And, I forget her name, who's the female lead, but she's like, is used to sharing cake with Patrick Dempsey, and then her love interest in the movie, she goes to like get some chocolate cake off of his plate and he's like, no, I'll get it for you. And then like does like the tiniest like bite and puts it on her plate, which like, at weddings and stuff, like one of us will get the chocolate and one of us will get the vanilla so we can, share. So like, again, we're sharing, but like, I don't want to share a sweat towel with you or a water bottle in a hot yoga class.
I agree.
On a hike, we share a water bottle.
Sometimes,
oftentimes, but anyway. So yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right.
Now we're going to get into the regular part of the episode.
Oh my gosh. All right. So why I even thought of this episode is because there was a scenario that we were in where we were paying attention to our children and some other, for lack of a better word, I guess, other people were not in the room. And basically I didn't know how to react. I feel like I kind of get like freeze frame when I'm around other people's kids and like their parents are not necessarily there in the room, but there because I don't want to parent them. I'm trying to like not step over any boundaries. And this goes back to like whenever I would babysit, which wasn't often, but if I babysat like while there was, let's say, the parents were there, I felt kind of weird parenting them while their actual parent was in the room. I felt like I didn't have the hierarchy to like do that, even though that's what they were like paying me to do. I just felt kind of weird. So it's not like a new thing for me, but I didn't really know what to do. And so I didn't act as quickly as I would have because I kind of got like stunned. And then I was like, wait, are they going to be mad at me because of like I step in here? And anyway, I was kind of like embarrassed and then also annoyed with myself because I feel like I did my children kind of wrong because I didn't step in as quickly as I normally would. And so do you have anything to say on that? Because you were there too.
Yeah, I just think that we need to be a little bit more specific. If you're in a scenario where a kid is doing something to your kid that you would prefer not to happen, this is what Lauren's
or even interacting, not necessarily doing something to them. I guess that I'm just clarifying.
Anything that you're not okay with, right? That's kind of what we're talking about today, right? So the two main things are how to parent them around other families that may have different expectations and rules and different parenting styles than you have, and also how to and when to step in when something another child is doing or another family is doing is affecting your kid. We've touched on this a bit in the past with respect to boundaries. This is a little more specific to when you're in situations around other families that you've probably put yourself in, right? These are going to happen. How do we eloquently and kindly deal with these things while also maintaining the boundaries that we're setting for our kids that we have in place to protect them and allow them to thrive and grow? So in this situation, something was happening to one of our kids, and it could have caused
things happened to both. It wasn't just one. It was different times, but they did happen to both.
Sure. And it could have resulted in injury.
Yeah.
So, and I had the same thoughts that you were having. It's like, how do we the other kid was not trying to do it on purpose, I don't
Mhm.
think. It's just like a playing gone wrong situation.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with it is the
Mhm.
subject, right?
Yeah, and to go backwards a bit, I forget what the episode number is, but the episode title for the boundary episode is called "Don't Take It Personally. It's Just a Boundary."
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think again, it's different for me personally whenever I'm around people I know. In this case, we kind of knew the people, but we kind of didn't.
So do you want to talk about why it's different for you?
I mentioned the babysitting scenario, like that's already
Mhm.
hard for me. But in this case, another reason why I was so frustrated with myself is because I was like, I don't want them to be mad at me. Like, I want them to
Right.
like
So you
me.
don't have an existing friendship and trust with them?
Right.
Yeah.
I think if I did, it would be a little bit better. But even so, like, I still feel weird, like making a parenting decision. And now I'm better. Like, I know what to do.
Sure.
I'm armed. I'm ready to go. But I think it was maybe not a pride issue, but it was.
I don't know that it's wrong to feel that
Yeah,
way. So
no.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
make you feel less. I'm just saying there's a difference. It
Mhm.
makes perfect sense to me that like if one of our best friends' kids was doing something, it's going to be way easier for me to talk to them or talk to their
Yeah.
kid about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I trust most of our best friends to help us parent our
Yeah.
kids, so like I would not be offended by them saying something to our kids as opposed to a stranger or somebody I
Yeah.
don't know very well doing the same thing. So I think that's a natural feeling of like, how do I step into this level of uncomfort or discomfort and deal with helping my kid?
Yeah, and I'll mention it later, but like it's very different for me than like someone I don't know at all, which
Mhm.
is we'll talk about it later. But I spoke to a friend who's a therapist and they were like, "You know what? I totally understand. I get where you're coming from." And I think another thing that I had an issue with, I was like, "Oh, I've read in books and stuff that sometimes you need your child to understand, like go through something to understand. But at this age, at 1.5, like they don't need that yet. They can't comprehend that all the way. And so she was like, they need like a mama bear to come in and narrate what's going on, verbalize out loud what's happening. So I could have said, I'm trying to go into this without being too specific. Let's say that there's an issue with a car. And so let's say Cypress has a car in his hand and he's going and another child comes up and like pushes him and like tries to get the car. And you're like, okay, so and so, I can see you really want the car and Cypress is playing with it right now. You can play with it after we're done. So you're saying it out loud and like your child knows that you're there and you're somewhat in control.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking to them and it's not in like a, hey, what are you doing? Like kind of way, which
Right.
is maybe not the best way depending on
Well,
the
you
situation
don't want to
go
step
about it.
in to parent the
Right.
other kid.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I know that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And like if we have the same scenario and it's like one of your kids against one of your other kids, like or for us, like one of the twins against the other twin, that happens to us all the time.
Yeah.
Right now we have a sharing, we're learning to share,
Yeah.
right? I think the difference there is you would say the same thing,
Yeah.
but you would also step into a teaching moment typically.
Mhm.
And you would say like, we need to be able to share and wait for Cypress
Yeah.
or Olive to be done. So that I think that step is where you don't go if it's not your kid. But like you already described, you're laying the boundary for like, hey, my child is playing with this. Thanks for your interest. We're going to help you use the toy when we're done, or we're going to have a quick turn and give it back. So you're being kind, but you're laying down the boundary without stepping in to rebuke or tell the other child
Mhm.
how to be and parent, because
Yeah.
it's not your responsibility. And that's probably hard because it's hard to not think our style of parenting is virtuous and correct. And it's hard to not get upset with that other child, especially if they may have hurt or could hurt your kid. So that's hard to do.
Yeah, and I think like I've been like trying to like find somewhere in the middle because it was whenever you were in Palm Springs and my parents were here, we went to a museum here in LA. It's the Children's Museum in Santa Monica. I can look it up, put it in the show notes.
It's
It's in Santa Monica. It's by the beach.
You're right. It's by the promenade. I was thinking of the mall.
It is in a mall though. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The twins were playing with like this peg wall that it had like propellers and things like that. And this like 7-year-old came up, yanked it out of Cypress's hand and like went to go play. And I was like, hey, he was playing with that and you know better.
Yeah.
And again, that's a scenario of being in somewhere where I don't know them. And I didn't yell that much. I was like, hey, he was playing with that. And like, honestly, Cypress didn't care. That was still the age where they didn't really care. I wasn't mean to her, but she like kind of like nodded at me and like handed it back. But like I would approach that differently now with like the learning that I've done.
This is a plug for us being not experts. So,
Yeah.
and also like, I think it's a good vulnerable story to tell because that is the way that most of us would want to react.
Yeah.
You know?
But again, like I would never have said that in this other scenario we were talking about
Yeah.
because like I know the people and that doesn't make it better. Like
Sure.
I could have said it a lot differently and I would go back and like do it differently now.
I think one of the pieces of advice is to set aside that initial feeling of anger that you feel and be there to protect, right? And protecting does not mean you have to enforce or like hurt the other person or, retaliate or anything like that. Like your job is to keep your child safe and to make sure that they understand the situation to the best of your ability to help them understand what's going on and be there to help them if they can't help themselves.
Yeah, and something that's interesting that I don't know if I ever really thought directly about it, but in the Montessori toddler book that I read, they talk about how in Montessori they don't force sharing, which I kind of agree with, like, because in life you're not like forced to share. Like it's in one of those kid things where like it's black and white and then it's just gray. They don't force to share. Now we do like, and we don't do that in the sense of like a toy. So like we do have them share, like they have this balance board that they'll take turns sliding on, and we'll say it's Olive's turn, it's Sipey's turn, and they do great with that. But we say it out loud and they're learning it. And then we also do it, we have like a toy box thing where you put the shapes in and they both like to play with it at the same time. And we're not having them like hand off, but we'll say it's Olive's turn, it's Cypress's turn, and they take turns putting the shapes in. And they're pretty good at that too.
I had a victory with that.
You
so
did?
I can talk about it later, but
you can talk about it.
Well, so yesterday that same thing was happening. I think it was yesterday, and they were getting very frustrated with each other. So it took a lot more attention from me, but I had to sit there, hold the box, make sure they weren't pulling it back and forth.
Yep.
And I split up the things halfway, the shapes halfway. Thank you. And Olive would do one, and then I would have her wait. And in some cases at the beginning, that was me putting my hand in front and like lightly telling her it's not your turn. Like, let's wait for Cypress. I would move it to Cypress, help him find his shape. He would put his shape in and vice versa. And we did it probably 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
By I think the 4th time, they were sectioning off their own pieces. They were giving pieces they didn't want to the other person. And they were waiting after they did one shape. Great. And they were watching. And I remember seeing Olive smile at Cypress when he got the right shape. I was like, so it's not that we do encourage sharing, but I think your point is we don't force it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's different. So like we also do that at a slide. We like, they know like it's their turn.
Balance board, like you said.
But it's different. Like I know sometimes, let's say there's a car and they both want it. I'm not taking it out of one of their hand and giving it to the other. Like I can understand if one of them was like taunting them with it. They're not really at that age yet, but like, haha, like I would say like, that's not cool. Like you don't need to do that. But we don't like take things out of each other's hands and like do it. We tell them like, oh, I know it's frustrating to, not have that car, but your brother's playing with that right now. And when he's done, you can have it. And so that's what I kind of mean by like sharing.
Right. No,
it's not, I'm right. It's just
it's a different scenario because with the shape thing, they came at it at the same time. So
exactly.
And it's one of them wasn't already.
And it's a toy that is shareable, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap up that section is like, different ages require different help. And when they get like, 7, 8, 14, I don't know, older, there are scenarios where it might be hard for you to not like dive in and protect them. But like those are learning scenarios for them. And like, obviously, if you're there, you can be paying attention and step in if needed. But they might surprise you, they might be able to like handle it all on their own.
This isn't super similar, but like I sent you a TikTok you haven't seen yet. It's a mom holding her young daughter, like probably similar to our twins' age. And
so like 20 months, a year and a half.
And she was tickling her daughter and her daughter started singing the Boundary song back to her.
I like it.
And it was, and she honored it and was like, oh, you don't want to be tickled? And she said, no. And, they started doing something else. And obviously not the same situation where like another family or another child is involved. But to your point, like they may surprise you with what they're learning from you. And another cool point about that is like the mom was happy about it and said it was like a tearful moment for her because she had been singing that song to her child. And it's not that the child remembered the song. It's that the applied part of like the learning of that song stuck with the kid and she used it the way that her mom would hope that she used it.
Yeah, it's the song by
to set her in a
Hopscotch.
better
I'll put
ways.
it in the show notes. We've talked about it in the Boundary episode, but it's a song by Hopscotch, and it's all about like, it's don't take it personally. It's just a boundary.
Yeah.
It's a
Encouraging
boundary.
the child, if there's
Yeah.
something they're not comfortable with, to voice it.
Yeah, it's please
Draw a
stop.
line.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling uncomfortable. I need more space.
It was super cute in this video too. If I can find it with you, you should link it.
The actual TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That's a way to give them the song and show the cute video we're talking about.
I'll link both because I'll link it to the person who wrote it too.
Good.
But yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but the Montessori toddler book, I really liked it. And even if you don't have a toddler yet, or you already had a toddler, I would recommend it. And again, if you don't have time, just listen to it. Like, listen to it instead of a podcast. You know, it's listen to it while you're doing dishes, laundry, whatever. I found it really helpful. And we're not like a strictly like Montessori household. We kind of just like pick and choose what we want. But I liked a lot of what they had to say. And one of the things that they said in this book, it was chapter 8 specifically. She says, you know, sometimes I wish I knew then what I do now, but we only know what we know when things occur. And that just made me feel good, specifically, you know, about the example about the Children's Museum, and essentially learning as we go and modeling that for our child is gold. It's like far more valuable than like doing it right the first time, if you are doing it and like correcting as you go.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's, I mean, obviously at 1.5, they may not fully understand it yet.
No, I think that they do. I
sometimes
would hope
like
that they do.
Well, like if I look at them, I'm like this morning, I was preoccupied with something and I wasn't looking at Cypress, and I like got down on his level and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to you. Did you want the chair or whatever? And he's like, yes. So like that's me getting on his level and apologizing and moving forward. I think they can understand that. As far as like something to go back in time and do, or like redirecting, like doing something differently, I'm not sure that they get that yet. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it just made me feel better. Just because like, you know, I feel like it's the right track. Correcting as I go and not being afraid to correct. Because sometimes, you know, for example, sometimes I'm walking the wrong direction on the street and I'm like, I just passed those people. I really don't want to turn around, so I'll walk. This hasn't happened in a while. I'm talking about like, you know, I think I was walking around New York City by myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I don't really want to turn around. I'm going to walk to the end of the street and then turn around, which is, I think, probably a pride issue.
The context here and the way that your family would put it is that you have other skills besides directional and navigational skills, right?
Yeah.
You seem to not like the way that I said that.
It just wasn't my point.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just context that's why that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm just saying you can stop and turn around at any time. That was the point I was trying to make.
Okay, that is different. Now it sounds like I'm making fun of you. I wasn't trying to.
It's okay.
So sorry, one more thing on that. It is good, to your point, to look back. It helps you and your self-esteem as well, because you don't have to look back and think, oh, like, I'm feeling shame and I hate that I reacted that way. It's more just like, oh, look what I didn't have the tools for, and now I do.
Yeah. And then another thing I liked in the Montessori toddler book was it talked, and again, it's not original to Montessori, but it's like they mention like going slowly in life, move slowly. Obviously in this day and age, it's like people just want to go fast and they want things now. Like, I mean, you can trace it back to the microwave. We want it now. And, you know, moving slowly, there is a benefit to that. You can respond versus react. And if you're responding to your child, you're saying like, oh, you know, I'm sorry that you're frustrated. If you're reacting, you are probably frustrated in the moment too. And you're allowed to be frustrated, and you can be frustrated while you respond, but you're likely not going to make a rash decision. Sometimes, you know, it's good to not move slowly. And this is an example that recently happened to us when we were traveling. We were at LAX, and we were letting the twins just walk around, watching them. Like one of us was walking with each of them. They were near us. Yeah. They were near us. They're like standing by the windows, you know, watching the planes. And they kind of went up to this other group of like kids. They're somewhat social beings, you know. They're kind of go up and like, they weren't doing anything really. I think they may have waved and said hi.
Cypress walked up to them.
He did.
Wanted to say hello.
And the youngest child in that one, I would say maybe he was, I don't know, older, maybe 3.
Yeah, 2.5, 3.
Reached over and pulled the tar out of Cypress's hair. I was paying attention. I did not act slowly.
You were very close. I said 10 feet away?
Yeah. I said, okay, we're not going to pull other people's hair. And I took Cypress's away. He didn't even cry. He was stunned. He was surprised because that really hasn't happened to him before. But I was there to respond. I reacted quickly, but I did not like scold the other child or anything like that. I just said, we're not going to do that. And then that also, tells Cypress we're not going to pull people's hair. Detail about this is that their parent did nothing. Their parent was sitting there and did absolutely nothing. Now, there was another sibling who came over and like grabbed the child who was maybe like, she was, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Yeah, older.
But again, the parent is sitting there watching and did nothing. So
I remember making eye contact with them.
yeah, with the parent. Yeah. Not cool.
This is not a this family bashing session, but this is important context. Another one of their children, maybe 2 minutes later, opened up the emergency door on the outside of the terminal, and the high-pitched alarm went off for probably 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because a security
a police officer
had to come shut it off, and they also didn't do something there. So I think the context here is like, I'm not, again, trying to shame these people. We all have different parenting styles. Some are more free than others, and that's fine. I think one of the pieces of difficulty in parenting around other styles is that it's easy to get frustrated at things that you don't understand. I'll speak about us, so I'm not giving too much advice. Like, I would prefer that we parent the way we want to parent for our children, and that we just see other people's styles as different, not necessarily wrong. Because I don't want us to elevate ourselves with so much pride that we think we're doing it right. As we've talked about before, we think we're doing things that will yield the best results, and we're consistently changing those things when we see a need for correction. But in no way do we think that we have the perfect parenting style at all, right? And I don't think it's really healthy to compare ours as better. I think it's healthy to talk about better strategies, but to talk about being better parents than others, I don't think that's a healthy practice. So for me, when I'm seeing these parents that I feel frustration in that moment, and I'm like, why would you not like go over and help to protect my kid? Like, if I would like to think if Cypress pulled somebody else's hair, I would go over, I would have him apologize, right? I would apologize on his behalf as well. I would probably apologize to the parent. Like, there's a lot, I'm not to say that's all perfectly right, but like, I would react differently in that scenario than that mother and father reacted. And it seems to me that they did notice what happened. And then we also see them causing other pain for a lot of other people with this alarm, and because they weren't watching their child. So what I'm trying to say is it's easy for me to, and I was in that moment frustrated with those people.
I mean, I was frustrated too.
Yeah. And in no way did we say anything to them.
No.
I probably shot a glare that I shouldn't have shot. But I think, to your point, stepping in as swiftly as you need to step in when there's something like that that's a little more severe that could hurt our kid, good. Getting him away from the situation and laying a boundary is what you did. I think that's a good thing. The piece that at least I didn't do in that moment is I didn't release that anger. Like, I initially was like, what the heck are you doing? Like, can you wrangle your kid? I think a lot of us have thought this, right? Can you wrangle your kids and control your kid? Like, how many people have thought that with a crying baby on the plane? We've all seen the video of, there's a lot of these, but of the guy who's upset because the parent can't control their toddler on the plane, as though it's the parent's fault.
Yeah, that's different for me.
I know it's different, but to me, it's very similar in the way that I'm reacting. Because mentally, I'm like, it's the kid that did it, right? Your parenting strategy may be let them fail a ton and not step in a bunch, right? And who am I to say that parenting strategy is right or wrong? It's just the one we're not choosing. So I'm going down a tangent, but like, I don't think it is productive for me to be pissed off at them in that moment.
No.
It's more just like, I can recognize like, oh, I don't think I want to do that as a parent. I would like a different strategy, and I'm happy we do a different thing, and then draw the boundary when something happens between those families. But like, we don't need to go up and talk to the parents. We don't need, you know what I mean? Like, there's things that I think a lot of us want to do that we don't need to do.
Yeah, I feel like I would have gone and talked to the parent if some real, not that pulling your hair isn't real harm, but if like real harm was done, like if blood was drawn, I would 100%.
Or if it's consistent, it's not stopping, they're not stepping in, we're not able to protect our kids.
The thing where I see difference, and maybe I'm just splitting hairs and latching onto something you didn't want me to latch onto, but if a child is crying on an airplane, there's not like an off button for that. Whereas like if they're kicking someone's seat, there is. If they're pulling someone's hair, there is. So like, I don't ever feel bad unless the parent is just like not doing anything. Again, I don't know. I know like when we have crying babies or toddlers, whatever, we are consistently trying to do something, and that is evident. But if someone's just letting their child run loose, I feel like it's a little bit different. I'm releasing that feeling. I'm not harboring it, but like I do think it's a little bit different.
I think what that speaks to is when you step in and not whether you should criticize and whether you should be angry at those people, right? So like, I agree with you. If I'm sitting in front of a toddler and they're on the plane and they're kicking my seat a bunch, like I don't think there's anything wrong with me turning around. Like maybe the parent didn't know, that's happened with me.
Yeah.
Almost exactly that scenario where Cypress was putting like the
papers.
Thin, the plastic security things, like the safety training materials.
Yeah,
so
the papers.
He was putting them over the seat and touching the lady in front of us. And for probably 5 minutes, I had no idea. She was super sweet, didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then like she very sweetly like just kind of turned around to see what was happening. And that triggered me to notice, oh, something's going on. And then I helped to pull him back. If she had turned around and said like, really however she wants to, but I would prefer it to be nice. But if she said like, oh, your son's like kind of putting his thing over a bunch, like, would you mind watching that? Great. No problem.
Exactly.
So like, to me, like if that's happening, it's okay to say something to draw the boundaries. But I think getting upset about it, you know what I'm saying? Like, and getting angry at that parent for a difference in style, I think that's tough. You're right. Yeah. We're kind of splitting hairs, but
I think we're agreeing.
Yeah. When you got a bunch of laundry and you don't want to do it, you send it off for someone else to do. You call rinse.
Wow. You should definitely get in the jingle business. Regardless of if you have children or not, whatever life stage you're in, you have laundry. You have laundry to do. And
chances... You should have laundry. If you don't, I don't know.
A nudist colony, maybe? I don't know.
No shade.
I guess you always have like bed sheets, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, you have laundry to do. Chances are you don't want to do it, or you'd rather do other things, or you don't have time. And Rinse is there to help you. They are available in tons of major cities like Los Angeles, Dallas, Austin, Seattle, and they basically come pick up your laundry and do it. If you do, they're basic wash and fold. They take it, wash it, dry it, bring it back to you, and you just have to put it away, which again might be a problem for you. Sometimes it's a problem for us, but regardless, the bulk of the work is done. They'll do it for you, and we have a $30 off link for you. So if you use the link in our show notes or in the YouTube description, then you have $30 off. No problem.
You should use it. They've got wash and fold. That's 24 hours. They've got wash and hang dry, which is sometimes a little bit longer. Sometimes it's 24 hours if you've got a small load. And they've also got dry cleaning if you don't feel like walking to a dry cleaner separate from washing your own clothes. So yes, use them. They're awesome. We use them. They're great.
Yep.
Thanks, Rinse.
Here are some tips and stuff we thought about that are helpful for parenting around other adults and kids. So we kind of mentioned it, but just teaching and sharing boundaries. So you're teaching your child the boundaries, you're reinforcing that, and then you can also share your boundaries with your friends and family, the people who are around, like consistently around the kids. And then if something goes wrong or awry, then, you can use that as a time to reinforce the boundary with your child because you're narrating.
I think teach and learn is the tip.
They're different. The sharing was for the other people, unless that's what you mean.
So we're talking about situations where you're with other families.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You could be with your friends and stuff. That's what the share meant. Like share with like our friends, our parents and stuff, like who are around the children, what our boundaries are.
Yes. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm saying if you only do that and don't try and understand the other perspective for their kids, you're only doing one side. The
sharing was more so in my head for the people who don't necessarily have kids but are around. Like,
sure,
that's like my parents, you're sharing our boundaries with them. So you can say teach, learn, and share. I like that.
Yeah, that's good. So when you have the other families involved that do have their other children, if you see something that doesn't make sense to you or they're parenting in a way that doesn't make sense to you, there's nothing wrong with asking like, can you help me understand why you guys do that? Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to do it, but like if you are going to step in to educate people why you do some things with your kids, you should also be open to being a sponge a bit and learning differences between your parenting style and theirs. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I like it. The next one, again, we've talked about it, is just narrating what's going on, whether that's intervening or correcting what someone says to your child or what another child is doing to your child. just basically like letting your child know that you're aware of what's going on and kind of just say what's happening and what you're doing to render the situation.
I like it. I take issue with the word correcting because I don't think what you mean is you're correcting the other child. I think what you're saying is like you're speaking into your kid what that kid may have meant or something, or you're setting the scenario for your kid.
I think by correcting, I mean like if their hands are on my child, I'm going to be taking their hands off of my child.
Sure. So yeah, I would call that protecting though more than correct, because you're not. We're talking about not stepping into parenting other people's kids. Yeah, that's what I see when I see correct. But I understand what you're saying.
And then again, it's okay to mess up. Use that as a learning opportunity for everyone involved. No to apologize. We are watching the newest season of The Bear right now. What's it on?
Hulu. Killer show.
Yeah, the second season just dropped, and this doesn't give anything away, but
kind of does. It's okay that it does. Just I would say, let's say spoiler alert for a tiny piece. If you're going to watch The Bear and you're worried about spoilers, just skip for about 30 seconds. Good.
Okay. There's a time where like somebody makes a mistake and they use the hand sign in American Sign Language for I'm sorry, which if you're not watching this in the video, it's just a fist and then you rub it on your chest. So if you're familiar with please, that's the open hand. A fist on the chest is sorry.
I'm asking you because I don't know. Is it? I think it's like shoulder-ish. Is it in the center? Or do you know?
I don't know. Maybe it's over the heart or.
I thought it was over. Maybe it was just because he's right-handed. Doesn't matter.
I don't know. It's on your chest and it's just like in a circle motion that says sorry. And it was just like a public display of I'm sorry. And we could talk about it later. So like acknowledging the moment and moving forward. So one is a great sign like to teach your child like I'm sorry so that they already know how to say that. And obviously we don't want to promote like over apologizing because, you know, it's a culture, a thing like a lot of women do. I do it where I apologize.
I was just gonna say, if you feel like you have done something wrong, then you apologize. If somebody else feels like you have and you haven't, it doesn't mean you have to apologize. That's right. To me, the line.
Yeah. So anyway, just like the I'm sorry sign and teaching that. Did you think that gave something away still?
Yes.
Okay.
I already gave the spoiler alert. It doesn't matter.
All right. So anyway, just saying like sorry and then like we'll talk about it later. Maybe your kid learns to do it, or maybe like you're using it like with your partner, like in public, like, hey, I'm sorry, let's talk about this later.
Which I think we're going to start doing.
Yeah. No, I really like it. That's why I wanted to say.
Something about it that is kind of required is that both people understand that sign. So there's a difference between the actual sign of I'm sorry, which just means I'm sorry, right? So that's the hand signal, which I think is very productive to teach our kids. I want to do that. And sign language for your kids is great for many reasons.
That's actually something I want to do. I want to take American Sign Language class.
I would love to. I've never done that actually.
Anyway.
We should do that. We haven't really talked about that. We should do that. There is a level of understanding that's necessary between both parties for that symbol, the way we want to use it to mean let's address this later and move on. So I think, and this is something that resonated, we haven't talked about this. This resonated really well with me after I saw that episode because I have a tendency to want to solve something immediately. And I think the way I bring up things I'm frustrated with you, if I feel like you're the one that caused something or whatever, like I like to address it right then. I think part of that is because A, I like to fix things quickly, and B, I don't have the best memory, so I don't feel like they're going to stay around. But what I like about this that we're talking about, the sign and the assumption that we will talk about it later or deal with it, for lack of a better expression, later, is that it's okay to like, I'm sorry, I realize I did something wrong here. I realize there's a problem. Let's not talk about it right now. I don't think that's something I'm good at. And I like the precedent it sets that, especially like, let's say we're getting out the door with the kids and trying to pack in the car, or we're packing up to go away from the beach or something. Like we do things towards each other that could be accidentally offensive or intentionally offensive all the time. We don't have to address, I'm kind of talking to myself. We don't have to address them right then.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's good at like putting out a spark that and not a spark in a good way. But like, let's say something was said or like there was a tone of voice or something where like, if it's not put out now, it's going to turn into a flame.
Yeah.
And I feel like the sorry hand sign is like kind of like bowing your head and being like, okay, I know this was off. Can we talk about it later? Let's move forward. Especially like if you're with another group of people or like a public setting where you kind of wanting to put forth like a united front and just talk about it later, or like not even talk about it in front of the kids. Like you just want to talk about it later. Yeah.
There's also, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but there's also a level of respect required between both parties for that to work. So I think the reason it's powerful is not only you're setting aside the discussion or argument or whatever it's going to be or apology for later, but you're also saying, hey, I recognize we're still a team. We're still doing something together. Let's pick this thing up and set it aside and keep moving forward as a trusted party. Like the scenario this comes from is super fast paced and high quality French kitchens. And if you haven't seen the series, that's what one of this guy has an experience in. And you can't just stop and obviously talk about a problem that you've identified or some level of disrespect or something. You're still on the same team. Service falls apart for the entire night if you decide to stop and have a 2-minute discussion about something that may even be a big thing. Like, so saying sorry is like, hey, I get it. Let's figure it out later. Let's still charge forward as a team, arm in arm. I like that perspective.
Yeah. And again, I think it's the same thing as like the spark that I was saying. Or like you could use another, not a riff, but that's what it is, but like a rip in a fabric. If you don't put it out, it's going to pull apart and you're staying together. For that. Just good to implement in general, whether you have children or not.
If you skip from the spoiler alert, welcome back.
Yeah.
It was more than a minute. Sorry, that's my fault.
I still don't think it was a spoiler alert, but whatever Nick thinks. I'm
not saying I'm right.
Err on the side of caution.
I would be upset if I heard that before I saw that episode. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why it feels like a spoiler.
Okay. I guess for me, I didn't see it as giving anything away, but it could take away from the impact. Is that what you're saying?
The place where it is enacted in the series after it's described, I think that piece gives stuff away.
Okay. I don't know. Anyway, it's a good show. You still
Wait. Let's talk about it later.
Let's talk about it later.
I'm signing sorry right now.
Okay. The other thing is just know that parenting in the same household, you should try to be like the same, not boundary, same base for everybody. But just know you can parent different kids differently. They are different people. A different child may take a different approach, and that's okay. And just be flexible and try different things.
This is funny because it's the other side of what we've recently heard of, like, you may have had the same parents as your sibling, but it's actually different versions of your parents that you had.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're different ages, for example, your parents were different people when you were born versus your sibling being born. They had different tools when they were parenting you versus
different traumas, like a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things. Yeah. So it's interesting from the other side. I haven't thought about it that way before.
And like, I think even if they're different, like for Cypress and Olive, obviously they're experiencing us at the same time. And I think that we don't show like favoritism and things like that. But I know of scenarios where, that has shown. And so like, even if they are the same age, they can experience like vastly different things. But in a good way, you can parent them differently and like speak to what they need the most.
Yeah. I think that's good for a lot of reasons though, because it also reinforces that there is not a perfect parenting strategy for every child.
Yeah. There's a book that I'm in the middle of right now, but it's about like the differences in boys and girls. And it's just fascinating. And like one of the things is like that a girl, I feel like I'm giving this away for like we're going to do another podcast on a similar topic, but, girls and boys hear differently. Like scientifically, like in our bodies, like girls can pick up on things when they're more soft spoken, but boys actually need you to speak a little bit louder for them to hear. Like I think it was 8 decibels, which is equivalent to like 3 turns on the volume in the car. And that just was mind boggling to me because, I think they have a stereotype of like, oh, boys just aren't listening or whatever. But no, like, are you speaking to them where they can hear? It's not just like them ignoring you. And so when you're equipped with that type of thing, you're like, how your child learns best, like you're going to do it.
Have they talked about at all
in the book?
Yeah. Boys' ability to tune in and tune out to specific voices or to have to focus in on a voice to hear it, like to actually register
not in
it?
Tuning out, but they talked about like in school that soft spoken, normally like female teachers, the boy won't listen. Not because they're trying to, but it's harder for them to focus on it. And if you speak louder, then they're more likely to pay attention and hear.
See, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because remember the other day when you said something to me, I had no idea you were saying it to me. It was a set of instructions and it seemed like I just flat out ignored you. I heard you talking, but didn't hear the words you said because I didn't think you were talking to me. That's why I was asking, because that is the way that my brain works. I don't I hear the things that are happening around me, but I don't focus in on them unless I think you're talking to me, which is why I prefer if you say like, hey babe, I've got something for you, or hey Nick, or whatever. So like, I know, I mean, it's not required, but like if I'm not paying attention to you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm doing something else. So like if you need me, say that you need me, then I'll focus in and hear
Yeah,
your
I don't think
words.
you ever like intentionally ignore me, and we're
No,
not.
it doesn't feel
That's
like,
a different scenario if you experience that specifically.
Yeah.
It's a lot less hard to be mad at science.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was asking. And I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just like, I was curious if they talk. It seems like with the school
I'm still
scenario,
in the very beginning of the book.
well,
And
it seems similar to the school scenario a little
Yes,
bit.
yes,
Like
exactly.
it might be volume
Uh-huh.
focused in that scenario, but I think that is like I don't know.
But I am more soft-spoken. You say I have a voice like a mouse.
Right. But think about the people you typically grew up having, or not having to, but more frequently interacting with. Like obviously your dad was around, but like your mom and your sister, you guys are the ones typically communicating more so than most. And you guys speak at a very low level compared to what I would.
And we
prefer to
don't
hear.
finish sentences. We
You
read
don't
each
finish
other's
sentences, and
minds.
you're very contextual.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Not to say that's wrong. It's just like I can see the difference between that and talking to me.
Yeah. The whole point is, you can parent differently, and that's okay. And it's not
Yes.
like putting a child in front of like ahead of another. Like it's actually in their benefit, I think, to parent them differently.
Which should also reinforce the empathy for other parenting styles outside of your family that we referenced earlier.
Sometimes. No.
I
Maybe
know,
I'm kind
I know.
of ultimately they're going to encounter things that are not great. But that shouldn't prohibit or inhibit you from taking them into social interactions. Like you want them to have those scenarios because this will help them prepare for real life. They're not going to be like sheltered for the rest of their life, and like it's actually has a negative impact if you do shelter them too much.
I already brought up the Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, you did last week, I think.
Yeah. So the review is like, I mean, I don't know. He got it from a therapist or something, but I heard it from him on a podcast. In very short, it was him saying a great parent is the one whose hand is always there when it's needed. So like the illustration is you're at a playground, your son or daughter goes out to play with other kids. If they get scared, they come back to you. Maybe it's one step and they come back to you. Maybe it's 3 steps the next time. Maybe it's 10 steps and they're away for a half hour and they come back to you and know where their safe place is and the place that will respond to them and protect them if necessary. I like that illustration. It means you're always there, but you're not always stepping in. So to your point, there is a middle ground, right? And this goes back to the Jordan Peterson thing I brought up a few podcasts ago as well, where you can't always protect your kid. It's impossible.
Are they doing dangerous things carefully?
Yes, which is the middle. So you can't always protect your kid, right? So if you always protect your kid, you're never going to equip them to protect themselves. And then if you're never protecting your kid, you're always allowing them to be in the face of danger, which opens them up to more risk. So there needs to be a middle ground. I think both of those things can marry nicely in what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about stepping in when you need to step in. The question is when to step in. My opinion is if it is something that is affecting your child negatively and they are not yet equipped to deal with that situation, maybe because they're too young, maybe you haven't talked to them about how to respond in that situation, whatever, use your discretion and step in to protect them. Again, not to parent the other people, but to protect your kids. But as hard as it may be, and I don't think we've really encountered this yet, but like to your point, we'll need to let them respond sometime in the future to see, how they will, and then help them understand.
Equipping them and like learning. And I think that's what's so hard to me. I feel bad about the original scenario that I mentioned at the beginning that kind of like prompted this episode is I can still see like Cypress looking at me like, what the heck is going on, Mom?
Yeah.
And I feel bad about that. And similar for Olive, but
well, I've had one with Olive where I felt the same thing.
Same time you're saying?
Different time. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying like I wasn't there for the whole part of it for Olive in this scenario. And I remember seeing her at the end of this scenario. But just like, what's going on, Mom? And I feel bad.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I chose myself in that scenario.
But well, and like aside, I don't think you should feel bad. I understand why you are. But aside from that, I think them looking to you is a great indicator of you need to step in, right? Yeah. At least this young, I think that's an easy, like, because the situation I was thinking of while it was happening, I think objectively I should have stepped in general, but like I got that same look you're talking about of like confusion and clear discomfort with what was going on. And they weren't doing anything. And obviously our kid didn't know how to respond. Yeah. I think that's one of the indications that they need you.
Yeah. The last tip is sometimes just be quiet. And like this is a fun one. The example that I'm going to give is when we were just at Universal Studios the other weekend. And when I say be quiet, obviously there's sometimes when the child is older and like you're gonna step in, but sometimes things go on.
You mean like choose not to step in? But
Yes,
be quiet.
but in this
the
case,
same.
and in the case I'm talking about, it like doesn't really affect your child. It's just like the innate parent. Like, what the heck are you doing? And we were at Universal Studios. We were waiting in a line at the Super Silly Fun World, like the one ride that every child can ride.
The flying bugs.
And there were these two kids in line, and they were picking like the nice pod. I think they're pansies. They were taking the bud off of the flower and rolling it between their fingers and like smashing them.
I'm gonna make you more angry. Before that, I saw them stepping in all over the vegetation and the flowers. Before that, in the same ones. It was clearly not.
I'm
for
like,
stepping.
where are their parents? Like,
I
where
just
are their
said that
parents?
to make you feel sad again. I'm sorry. I'm happy you didn't see that.
And I was like, I shouldn't say something.
So hold on. Nick? Walk us through with what happened. Yeah. So you looked and you almost said something.
I thought about it. I'm like, guys, like that's just like beautiful. Like, keep Universal Studios beautiful. I don't know. Like, what are you doing?
Universal Studios environmentalists.
Yeah. Like, that's just like, I don't know. You don't just go trample on other people's flowers. I think that metaphorically and like in real life, you don't do that. And so funny. I'm like, what are you doing? And so again,
so your inclination was to say something to them.
I wanted to, but I didn't think it was my place. And so I didn't.
Well, you looked at me.
I looked at you.
You had that thought. You were leaning towards no, but you were real close to the edge. And for those of you who don't know Lauren very well, she's very much a like protect the things that should be protected. Like I feel like you're the one that typically would call out somebody who's littering, would call out somebody who's destroying property next to you. Like you tend to step in that way.
The way our friends like sometimes describe me as like I'm defending people who need to be defended.
Yeah.
And that's not like, it's not necessarily like, Nick, you're my husband, but if you're messing with somebody, I'm going to call you out. It's in the point, like, I'm not playing favorites in this. Like, I am playing to the underdog.
You're a protector, whether it's flowers or people or whatever else. You're a protector.
So,
that's true. That's
true. It was
hard
for me.
But you looked at, and I think this is a good illustration of how we work together as well.
Yeah.
You looked at me to try to validate, like, should we say something and should we do something? And you didn't have to ask. I knew what you were looking at. And I said what? I said, we can't say anything.
Yeah.
We need to not say anything.
Yeah.
Which is tough, especially like, so this was not affecting our kids. This was not affecting our family. Our preference would be that people don't destroy the thing around us, of course, but it's not our kids. It provides no benefit to us to try and parent their kids and step in. There are people who work there that are supposed to be doing that. And
makes their jobs harder.
No, I'm saying who are supposed to be keeping the boundaries, like there's security, there's, I'm sure the people at the kids rides look out for stuff like that, make sure people are safe, make sure they're not destroying property for Universal. It's not our job.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm saying we made the right choice, in my opinion. I don't think it is our job to step in and parent other kids unless it's affecting our kids. And even then we're not stepping in to parent. We're stepping in, as we've talked about in this episode, to protect our kids and draw our family's boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The other example I was going to give is I think this was pre-kids and we were at Nobu.
Was it? I think it was more recent. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
We were there for my birthday last year, but
I think they were with us.
That wasn't the time though that it happened.
Okay. Good.
And we were at Nobu and the Malibu location, which is the best location in my opinion. And it's right there on the beach, right? And there are these kids there, which like I'm for kids in a restaurant. Like, we take our kids into a restaurant. That doesn't bother me. But these kids were running amok, and I don't know if Nobu is the restaurant to run in to begin with. They were not only doing that, which whatever. What set me over the edge was they were taking the silverware and like the candles and stuff off of the, not lit candles, off of the table and dropping them over the edge of the, like right there on the beach.
Onto the beach.
And
over the edge of the railing.
I did tell a waiter. Not that they needed to be quiet. Like, again, it wasn't about like them being quiet. I'm like, I told it to them because I'm like, you're going to come seat somebody here and their silverware is not going to be there. That's why I told them. I was trying to help the waiter, but I didn't like narc on the kids, but I kind of did.
Well,
at the same
this
time.
is a different, so like if we were next to somebody who worked at Universal and like there was a way for us to discreetly be like, hey, it looks like they're killing the flowers. Like, I don't think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But that's not you stepping into parent. That's
right.
the line, right?
Right. And I didn't say anything to the kids or anything like that.
Or the parents.
I don't even know where their parents were.
Yeah.
Again, where are their parents? But
I think one of them was there during part of it.
Oh.
which I remember you and I talking about, but it doesn't
I
matter.
don't recall.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just, again, sometimes it's just be quiet and let it pass. Or
Yeah.
use it as a teaching moment for your child when you get home. It's like, remember that?
Yes. Later. Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
Not like in front of like you're better than them. Don't do that. Anyway.
This is what we don't do. Very loud. Do you see those terrible children? Don't do that. No, don't do that.
No. Okay, so I asked you on Instagram if you had any questions for us or scenarios you needed help with, and some of you wrote in. So the first question we kind of already answered, but I want to just kind of tie it in a bow for us. It was what to do when another child is being aggressive and their parent is doing nothing to intervene.
To clarify, aggressive towards your kid.
Aggressive towards your child. I would, and these are like younger children in this specific scenario. And we talked about it. You're going to narrate it and say like, okay, we're not going to do that. Or, okay, I can see you want this truck, but, this child is playing with it now and you can play with it after. That's kind of frustrating, isn't it?
And your goal is to draw the boundary for your kid and protect your kid and teach your kid not to parent the other child.
Yeah. And I think like, because you're focusing on your child, it's clear that that's what you're doing. You're not trying to parent the other one. And by saying it out loud, your child knows, their child knows, and if the parent is at least in earshot, they can hear and they're aware. So they pretty much can't get mad at you because like it's clear it's for your child.
Yeah.
You're not being like mean. It's hard to misconstrue that when you're doing that. It's like saying it out loud and just saying what's happening.
And if it doesn't stop, it's okay to take your kid out of the situation and just go to a different area.
Unfortunately.
Well, I don't think that's
unfortunately, like
I
if you're at the park and like you have to leave because
but there's other things at the park.
Yeah.
You know, like your kid may be a little bit annoyed, but I think there's a lesson in there as well. Like if somebody is being aggressive, is hurting you, is violating your area, and you have an opportunity to go somewhere else, it's okay to do so and remove yourself from the situation. I think it gets complicated later. This is probably an episode for in the future. How to teach your kids to protect their siblings and encourage their siblings or their friends when they need to. Because I think there's if you see a bully, right? Like there's things to do differently there than just, it's not affecting me, I'm going to sit back and do nothing, right? Obviously our kids are young, but I'm saying it's okay to take your kid out of the situation if the other child isn't going to stop.
When I would say if you move areas and it's persisting or they like follow you, I feel like it's okay to say something to the parent.
Oh, 100%.
And like request like, hey, would you mind talking to your child for a second? They keep doing this to my child, and they should technically already be kind of aware what's happening because you said it out loud if they're in earshot.
So this is actually something we didn't talk about. I like that you're bringing it up. I think the way that you bring it up to a parent is very similar to the way that you bring it up to a kid. So you're not asking the parent to do something on your behalf. You're saying, hey, this is happening. We would prefer it not to happen to us.
Yeah.
Can you help?
Yeah.
You're not saying like, oh, tell your kid to stop hitting my kid, right? That is your goal, but you don't want to, like, if I'm a parent, I don't want somebody to tell me how to parent either. But if you told me, hey, Cypress is like throwing sand at my kid, can you help? Yeah. Yeah, of course I will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I
Please tell me.
Yeah. Cause we want to assume virtuous intent. So we want to, I feel like I'm talking to you. I'm not trying to. In my opinion, we should assume that the parent also wouldn't prefer for that to happen. Maybe isn't seeing it. Whatever, like, I think most
maybe they
people,
don't know you're talking to them.
Well, sure.
They hear the words, but they don't even know what's going on.
They're on a phone call. They're talking to the other spouse, whatever.
Something happened this morning. They're preoccupied.
Yeah. So like we can't approach them with anger, even though we might feel it in some cases. Like it's a good point that you're recommending. If it's incessant, they're following you around, whatever, they're not going to stop doing that thing to your kid. Yes, you tell the parent. That's what I would prefer to happen if it was my kid. But say it in a way that's like, hey, this is happening. We would prefer it not to. So you're drawing the boundary and then asking for intervene.
And also like you're trying and to show and modeling your child, like things don't go our way, but we don't have to get angry or upset. Obviously that's a common thing. That's normal to get angry. But if you can help them like work through that younger, then that'd be really great.
I'm also just now thinking about it, but like it also models that it's okay to escalate in some situations. Yeah. Like it's okay to tell your teacher. It's okay to tell another parent. It's okay to tell a principal. It's okay to tell a police officer in certain situations. Again, those things are okay and should not be feared. Scenarios
are like social interaction is hard in that case, and it's a teaching moment. And so you're using that and you're going to do great. The second question is very specific. It's about screen time. They said, we limit screen time in our household, but our in-laws give our children unlimited screen time. So my opinion on this would be the first tip that we shared is to share your boundaries. I think we did a good job of this. Like whenever we, the twins were younger, we didn't do screen time. We didn't want anything showed. We're like, that's something we're not doing. Now we occasionally do it. But again, it's very limited and we don't want them like going over to a house and just watching a ton of screen time. Like our nanny doesn't show them shows. Like she's playing with them. I would ask you the question, like, was that ever shared with them? Because they may not know. If they do know, that's kind of a pickle for me. And I would say just in how to address it, because obviously I don't want there to be a riff, but I would probably have the person whose parents they are. So like if it was my parents, I would have the conversation, not Nick. I would say like, hey, we would really like to limit our screen time and we'd love if you would like honor that. We've seen that, Billy gets a little bit more aggressive, and his attitude changes a little bit, and it's better for him if we limit it. That'd be so great. And I think there's also like a line of like, okay, are they just showing them the screens? Are they doing it to be fun? Is it like a movie night where everyone's together? I think there's some questions I would also ask with that. But
that would come out in discussing it with them.
I think that's hard. It's hard whenever you want to parent a certain way and other people aren't honoring. But that's also why I'd ask the question of like, do they know?
Yeah. And we talked about this in the boundaries episode, like you said. I think like kindly saying like, oh, this is something we're not doing for our kid or our kids. This is why we would love if you could help us with this. So inviting them to parent with you as opposed to telling them they're wrong and you're right. Right. And, I think it's a common thing for grandparents to, the same way you would, feel like their parenting strategy is correct and they don't really need advice and they don't really need things to change. So I think it makes sense that this would happen a lot, that they would like, oh, whatever. They're not like super serious. Oh, it's different when they're at grandma's house. They can have more candy. They can do whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if it is enough of a thing for you where it's bothering you and you would prefer it to be different, then there's another conversation you have, which I think this matches what we said in the boundaries episode, without the kid, where you're like, hey, like, it sounds like this is still going on. Let me help you understand like why it's frustrating for us. We prefer this not to happen. Is there maybe another activity we could do? Is it difficult for you to watch them and you're putting the TV on? Like, do some investigation and try and help to understand, because it's probably not just defiance. It's probably a difference in expectation, different parenting strategy, or there's something happening that you're not aware of. And then like the last resort is like, if it's that big of a deal, the TV doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but if it's that big of a deal, you're seeing the effects, the negative effects from it. You really don't want it to happen. Just like you would with a babysitter or whoever else is watching your kids, there's a point at which you need to pull them away, either not away from your in-laws or parents, but just like, if you're not comfortable with whoever's watching your kids and the way they're doing it, they either do it less or you find another babysitter or another way for them to get taken care of or whatever. I'm not recommending less time with family, but like there is a point where it's like, hey, like we really need this to happen and we're seeing bad things from it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time, like grandparents are like, oh, I want to spoil them.
Yeah.
But if you tell them the why, like I love sharing the why. Sometimes Nick thinks I'm sharing like too much information. But for me, I personally process like, I love to know the why because that helps me understand. And I might think it's like a dumb idea or something like that. But if I know the why, again, you can't disagree with science on like, that TV time, sometimes it's bad. Like one of my favorite books is Expecting Better, a parenting book. And she talks about like, the screen time studies are often inconclusive because it's not like, okay, these people read books for their children too. It's just inconclusive. And so I do think that like screen time can be bad. But like a lot of things can be bad if they're misused. And so I wonder if it's also coming from a place of like spoiling, but sharing the why, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. And like, I think to put it back on us as parents as well, like it may be a situation where it's just like few and far between. It's not going to kill your kid if they have a little extra candy or a little extra sweets or a little extra screen time or whatever. But like, I think there's a difference between that and a consistent disregard for your parenting strategy, which I think is more what this question is towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening along. If you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube. You can give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever. You can even write us a review. And speaking of that, you can write in and ask for questions and help and topic discussions, and we will do it for you. You can email us at hello@boygirlmom.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at boygirlmomdot.com.
Mhm.
Send us a DM, a hello. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks
Thanks
for growing with us.
listening. We love growing with you.
Bye.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.